tere kõigile! Mina olen Rein Zobel, mõned teist teavad mind EEVR-ilt, mõned äkki ajakirjast Digi, mõned äkki puhata ja mängida podcastist. Ja mina töötan nüüd siis täiskohaga sellises ettevõttes, mille co-founder ma olen, nimega EEVR Productions. Ja oh, sorry, I was supposed to speak in English. And EEVR Productions is the company that creates all kinds of virtual reality content. Our main strength so far has been interactive 360 videos. So we kind of try to connect the film world and the gaming world, because my background is more in film, but I'm also a gaming and technology enthusiast. And EEVR was made less than a year ago, December of the last year, and so far our clients include the city of Tallinn, the city of Pärnu, Noorsootöö Keskus, the youth center organization of Estonia, University of Michigan, the Energy Ministry of Georgia, and some others. So we are pretty busy right now. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Virtual Reality Creators Lab of 2017, which was a workshop in Germany, Munich. And it was 1 week of virtual reality creation. It was all organized by, it was paid for by the European Union and the Media Fund. So it was this, early this year there was this call for participants, and I found out I was the first one who wrote an application. So I was very enthusiastic about it. And at first actually I didn't get the full scholarship, and I was too busy to apply for the paid one, but later they wrote me and said somebody dropped off, so you got the free participation. I only had to pay for the plane ticket, so I was very happy. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit, since I'm gonna go over everything very fast, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a taste what I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna talk about the workshop itself, and then the film Lawnmower Man, which the film's director, Brett, was one of the speakers there, so I will show the trailer. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about 360 video creation. There were a bunch of cameras and equipment, and also a very thorough presentation of the software Liquid Cinema. And it's not so much about the software itself, but it kind of made me think about things that I haven't thought about before, so I thought I would share. Then I got the opportunity to play around with Google Tango, which definitely interests some people, especially the AR people. And then we did some photogrammetry, and I also visited VR arcade, the opening. It was called Presence. So all the people who are involved in the VR arcade business might be interested in seeing the pictures and hearing what was that all about. So let's get started. That's a group photo. There were 50 people from 17 countries. I thought I'm the only person from Estonia, but during the meeting event suddenly Rein from Estonia walked up to me and said hi. Who doesn't know, then Rein is AR and VR, actually more AR I think, investor, and when later Christoph is going to talk about his AR business, then Rein is the main investor or initiator of this whole process. And also he's a filmmaker, because he made the film American Summer 1 year ago, which was in cinemas. So he was also actually interested in making a VR film, and was getting to know all the technology and stuff. So that was it from Estonians, but there were no Latvians, but there were 4 Lithuanians, which was very strange. And apparently they're very cool guys, and since this year there's also a Lithuania 100 going on in addition to Estonia 100, and they are making this big VR event about the bloody events that were related to them regaining their independence 20 years ago. So that should be fun. And other than that, there were a lot of people, of course, from Germany, but also Sweden, Italy, Ireland, one Brazilian, and also I would say that the post-Soviet bloc was pretty well represented, like Romania and Belarus, for example. So a lot of people from different places and different backgrounds. So.
What's the thing in the bottom right?
Sorry?
What's the skateboard wheelchair thing in the bottom right?
That's a camera rig, a 360 camera rig, and I'm gonna show it later with a separate picture. So you will hear more about this later. So the whole thing took place in the town of Munich, city of Munich. When I arrived pretty early, so I had some time to kill in the city, and apparently during that time was a big gay parade, so that was interesting. Actually, I was wondering what it means when in the Google Maps you see this long line on one street which is rainbow colored. Apparently that means a gay parade, so I don't know. But the environment itself was in a Filmstadt in Bavaria, and the environment was very creative. On the tables there was like colorful papers and Play-Doh, so you could do things, and also beer was always there. So the environment was very creative, very supportive, and the place itself was very cool. The Bavaria film. What's it called? Just Bavaria Film. It says the sign, but it's like this, like a separate part of the city, where there's a lot of not only studios but a lot of post-production also, and game creation. For example, for the Star Wars film Rogue One, they did some effects in there, the VFX work. And also it was the place where they filmed Das Boot, the submarine film from the 70s or 80s? 80s. And apparently the original the submarine, the interiors were there. So when I saw that, I of course sent a picture to Karel, who's making a submarine game based on Das Boot for the last 3 years, and he couldn't believe that I was actually there because he has been modeling it for 3 years. So I took a bunch of pictures and 360 pictures and sent it to him, and he wished he was there himself and there earlier. And who knows who that white thing is? Yes, that's Falcor. And I recently rewatched. I'm a big fan of adventure films, and I recently rewatched Neverending Story, and I took a picture. A friend took a picture of me riding this guy, and I showed it to some people inside. I thought that everybody's going to be like, "What the hell is that?" And like several people at the same time when they saw the picture just screamed, "Falcor!" So apparently he's a very popular character all around the world. So it was a very interesting place for the whole thing to happen. And I think I was in the submarine every day. I really loved the film at that spot. So, but let's get to the actual presentations. So the first one was Brett Leonard, and he made the film Lawnmower Man in 1992. So I'm going to show you the trailer.
From the imagination comes the story of a man.
Go! Come on, boy, let's go. Grass is waiting for you.
With the mind of a child.
Yes, Cybo Man. He came to see me.
Cybo Man. comics, right?
Yeah, Cyberman. And a doctor
Virtual reality holds a key to the evolution of the human mind.
with a vision of the future.
I have a game in my house that you might like to play. Would you like that? Yeah? Okay. That was really bad. I have different games. I know one that could help make you smarter.
Now, Job Smith is about to enter the world of virtual reality.
Just relax. This would be like being up there with the stars, Joe. They're going to another planet. His mind is like a clean, hungry sponge. I just graduated to the next level, Joe.
You're not the one. Oh, man. You've certainly changed. I don't know how you did it, but I approve.
Absorbed Latin yesterday in less than 2 hours.
Don't worry
A world where the normal course of events can suddenly turn inside out.
You realize, Dr. Angel, that my intelligence has surpassed yours.
The imaginary becomes real.
I can get inside my head, Joe.
You can't hide anything from me, Dr. Angel. And reality
We have no idea what he's going to do.
is all in your mind. The Lawnmower Man.
So yeah, and that film was from 1992, so a lot of years before the actual coming of the virtual reality. And Brett Leonard said that when Paul Merlocky's Oculus was bought by Facebook for $2 billion, then in one interview Paul Merlocky said that Lawnmower Man was actually a great inspiration behind the whole Oculus project. So after that, Brett Leonard got a lot of invitations to different kind of conferences, and he's going around the world talking about virtual reality. I looked up his IMDb page. His last film was a fifth film from the popular Highlander series with Duncan MacLeod, and his IMDb score is around 3. So yeah, maybe not so good of a director, but he's a very cool guy and very talkative. He had some pretty cool ideas, and he said that it's actually ironic that he has made other virtual reality films about virtual reality. Also, he says, and they have all been cautionary tales about virtual reality, but they end up making people excited about virtual reality. So he doesn't really understand that. But he said that VR, he thinks, is a very good business to be in, or content creation in general, because there are some reasons why people need more content. One is the change of the family model, that people live alone more, and when they don't go out in the evenings, they need some sort of entertainment. So VR is very good for that, and also because the robots are taking our job. So the citizen salary is probably a thing in the future, and people who don't have a job and who can live comfortably without a job need something to do with their days. For example, enjoy virtual reality content. And the third interesting thing would be the self-driving cars, because when you're driving and you don't actually have to drive, then you need something to do also. So he's seeing the whole content market as a very growing thing, and was very he was very cautious about it, and he had a suggestion that everybody who creates virtual reality should take it very, very seriously, and also he begged us to be considerate about what we're doing, and then make sure that VR is something that doesn't isolate people, but rather would connect people. And these are nice thoughts. I thought that was something to think about. So then there was a lot of 360 cameras and a lot of 360 technology. The thing you asked about in the left is as a remote controlled rig, which is very good for VR because obviously when you are a VR cameraman you can't walk around with the camera, and when camera is on rails then you can't move it there because you're visible the whole time. The thing you see on my head is the driving mechanism for the same robot. It's not actually a VR set. It's just like a fixed 2D screen. But the latency was very quick when it was driving around thanks to the router on top of my head probably, and so it was quite easy to control it while wearing the headset. Below you see a 360 rig out of I think 6 Sony A7 cameras, which is not easy to put together because these are not the cheapest cameras, not too expensive too of course, but this rig should have an amazing light sensitivity as you can practically film in pitch blackness with those cameras. And on the right is a Z-Cam, an S1 model, which was a Indiegogo or a Kickstarter campaign about a perfect 360 cameras, and now it's out and it's like 2,000 or 3,000 euros, so it's not that expensive. And people seem to like it, but it has only 4 lenses. Yeah, myself I use GoPro Omni mainly, and everybody said that this is way better than GoPro Omni, but nobody could actually tell me why. So I stick to the Omni right now. I think, yeah, since I'm already talking about 360 cameras, I think I should defend 360 film a little bit, because a lot of people are saying that it's not actually virtual reality. I think that when you create a virtual environment around people that's believable, then of course it's virtual reality. For example, when you film in a very high place and you show the video to people and they go like whoa, and they actually get afraid, then it's definitely a step up from a regular 2D screen. But since I'm a gamer myself, I of course I prefer the full interactivity of 3D applications. But I think the line is going to be very blurry in the coming years, because when volumetric capture is also going to be a thing, and when people are kind of dividing it that 360 isn't VR and 3D is, then very soon it's very hard to differentiate these two. But I think they both kind of have their own places, but both from both you can learn about the other. Actually, the comparison I like to make is like photography and film, because you could argue that film is better than photos because it's moving, but that doesn't mean that after the coming of film more than 100 years ago, photography has disappeared. Photos are a very important medium, but of course when I would go to cinema and somebody would show me a slideshow of photos, I would be pissed. So next up, Liquid Cinema. Liquid Cinema is a software for 360 videos, and it's kind of an authoring tool in a way that you put your video files in there, and then you can do stuff with them. For example, you can make an app and export it to all these different devices, and some of them are not even VR devices. For example, you can export the app to a tablet, and then it becomes just like a 360 video that you can watch through it. So there were some interesting ideas. For one, if you have ever been in contact with video editing, then you might know the meaning of a cut. one video changes and gets replaced with the other. This is called a cut. So when you watch 360 video, when you watch all around you, and then you could assume that one direction is a bit more interesting than the others. That's kind of the direction that the filmmaker wants you to look at. So if you have ever seen a 360 video, I think it has happened that you're looking at something interesting, and then a cut happens, and you're looking at a trash can. The interesting stuff is over there. So one thing that Liquid Cinema did was that when there's a cut, then it realigns the anchor point or the middle point of the film, that after a cut, this is exactly where you look at. This is the interesting part. And then you can look around from there, but when it's quick editing, then you kind of don't miss the point, which I think is a little bit against what the VR should be, because you should be able to look all around you, and but I think it has a point for some pieces, and kind of made me interested about it more. And one very important thing to note would be that the anchor point would only change on a horizontal line, so that if you look down, it doesn't mess up your horizon. So that when I look down, when the edit happens, and the horizon is now below me, and I'm like tilted and have no understanding of what's going on. But it doesn't have to be like this in a 2D screen. So there were also a bunch of tools that Liquid Cinema used, and the interesting part of it was that it was not done in video itself, but it was like a metadata that would go with the video, which is very important for me as a filmmaker or a video maker, because when you don't know when you change even the tiniest bit in a video project, like for example you have a 1 hour long project and you have subtitles and you find a typo in a subtitle, then you make this one change and you have to render it all again, like the whole thing. It could, if it's effect heavy work, it could take like days. So the video rendering is kind of everything needs to be burned into the video file, and the Liquid Cinema would provide an option to have some things out of the video files. For example, like transitions. You have the fade to black transition between the cuts, and it would not be, in MP4 files it gets this very blocky and very ugly, and you could do this, post this. So sorry, I'm going very technical, but the whole idea was that to provide a quick way to show video content where you could make small changes with an update instead of replacing the whole video file. So in the field of interactive video, this was very interesting for me.
In other words, you could hack the video or
Kinda.
take away the transition
Kinda, yeah. I mean,
after the video's been made.
definitely. You could even take parts out, or for example, one thing that happens in video editing is that somebody says that you need to blur out this face or this logo on the wall. Then you don't have. Imagine when you have this VR content in your phone and you have to download the video file. Then you would have to re-download. Not only would the content creator have to replace the whole thing, but the user would have to re-download the file, which is huge. So there were some very interesting tools, and I think this is generally the way to go. If Liquid Cinema is the software that everybody's going to use it, this is a question, but they had some very ambitious ideas, and also they are going to have some sort of collaboration with site Vimeo, which is a very popular video showing site for video content creators. So I'm very interested in what's going to happen there. Might be a better way to show VR content. But let's move on to Google Tango. So after 2 days of these lectures, we moved on to the workshop part, which was was very chaotic and un-German, and at one point things got so messy that an Estonian had to save the whole thing, and that was not me, that was Rein, who kind of stepped up and said, "Listen, I have done a lot of hackathons. let's do it like this." And the organizers were like, "Yeah, you do it." So then things got better, but I got very lucky with my group. We wanted to try out photogrammetry. We are a very technically minded group, you could say, because a lot of people in this, there were a lot of very experienced content creators also, but there were some people who were like kind of like, yeah, I don't know anything about virtual reality, but I like poems. So they were trying to use VR as some sort of a poetic, creative outlet, which is fine, but you know, that's not why I go to Germany to workshops. I want to try out new tech and try new things. So we decided that we want to do photogrammetry, and one instructor who was working in the Bavaria film had a Tango, because they had a small studio that actually creates games for Tango. So that's the first thing. If you don't know what Google Tango is, then it's a platform, like an augmented reality platform for different apps. And using the phone's camera and sensors, you can map places, and it can detect different sort of kind of a point cloud, and makes a. So it's. Yeah, I don't have a very good definition, but it's kind of a way to map the environment using just your phone. So. The technology itself is amazing, and it creates so many possibilities. I'm gonna show you one more video, probably it's gonna take a little bit of time again. No, not appearing. I'm not very experienced with slideshows, as you can see. So what you see here is technically AR tilt brush. So you can draw into the air, and not just like on the screen, but you know, into actual 3D space, and then you can watch it from all around. So it's like a tilt brush in AR, in real life, and I think that's very impressive. For example, there were also like games where you could take a table and set up a track, and then have small virtual cars drive around these tracks, and you could all watch it with your phone from like completely different angles.
So this tilt brushy thing work well with these crowded backgrounds and people moving around?
It worked well spatially, but it didn't have the option that people would actually move from in front of it. You know, that didn't happen, of course. But
the tracking was solid.
But the tracking was very solid, and so for 2 days we were playing around with it. First we got this Lenovo phone, which is out, I think, like half a year or 1 year already, and that was not very impressive. And then we got our hands onto an Asus Zenfone, which was way better and way sharper. But still, I would say that it feels quite beta-like, maybe even alpha-like. And it actually was supposed to come out, this phone, like in the beginning of August, but I googled this morning, and the reviews just came out yesterday, so maybe it was postponed. Anyways, now it should be out, but it has a lot of flaws. For example, I'm not going to put it full screen right now, but here in this picture you see how this guy is scanning this guy is just doing this T-pose, kind of going into model. And so I have these results in here, and so this one is actually not bad, right? I think it would, even when it would be cleaned up properly, it would kind of even pass for a video game model. But it could also go a little bit wrong. For example, this monster here. Yeah, it's begging us to kill him. Because the guy didn't move his hand. His hand was there the whole time. But at some points, the tracking can just make a little dip, and it's a little bit misaligned, and then it doesn't work anymore. And so for scanning people, not a very good tool actually. But for scanning rooms, maybe a little bit better. So this is like a small room. It's from close up, it's pretty ugly. It was like this little exposition somewhere. So there's a bench and wooden walls and a screen on the wall, and you know, it's when it would be for like a city, then it wouldn't be too bad, I think. So
like a few seconds to scan.
A little bit longer. So here you can see me scanning. It's pretty much like this, that you just hold the camera and you kind of just go from each angle, kind of trying to scan everything in from all the angles, and just getting more and more data. But I tried to scan the submarine, and I think I spent a lot of time with this one, and well, it's actually a little bit misaligned. It's rotated. I wouldn't say it's too detailed. It's actually pretty messy. Of course, the place was a little bit dark. It should have needed more light. But for quick prototyping, it can be a very powerful tool. But making something very, very, you know, like a 3D asset out of it, I don't think it's ready yet. This model is pretty much done by me just taking the phone and just doing like a quick walk in the submarine. So, and then a quick walk back. So the lack of detail is pretty obvious, but at the same time you still get this you know, like kind of a spatial map out of the place. So you get the scale. I mean, you know, it could be very useful tool, for example, like mapping some tunnels when it could be on a drone or a caves. But for creating like a film or game quality 3D assets, definitely not.
When you would have a extra light on it, then you would have these weird shadows everywhere.
I think it's able to detect shadows, but one weird thing about the camera was that it was actually you couldn't set it on manual camera. It was automatically changing the shutter and other options, so that when you would, for example, scan in a white room, then at one point you get this darker area and lighter area very suddenly because the camera settings just changed. And one interesting thing that happens is that you know, it's not that I fell into a puddle or something. The gray area over here is because the background actually leaks onto the objects. So that, and also vice versa. For example, when you have like a plant in the corner and you try to scan the plant, and when it would at the same time scan the wall behind it, you get these green dots on the wall because it can't separate what's an object and what's not. So it's not that accurate. So you get a lot of this carryover from one object to the other one. And yeah.
Question: is it only then camera-based, light-based, or does those phones you mentioned have also some other sensors? Do they use?
They definitely use the gyroscopic sensor also of the camera. Christer, maybe you can be more specific.
Sure, I think they have just two cameras and they do like stereo vision, just triangulation basically. But yeah, they probably use all the sensors they have, like so accelerometers.
Mm-hmm. But you know, an interesting thing to remember about Google is Google Tango is it's not just one app. The app that we used was called there was actually two separate apps. One was Constructor, one was Open Constructor. I don't remember which one we used, but it's important to remember that this is a platform and it has these different kind of applications which might use the camera and other data also. So, but you know, it's amazing that you have this sort of technology in a phone, but I wish there was a device specially for that. Then the results would probably be much more amazing. Yeah, but for example, when we used it for VR, then we were able to make these quick prototypes. I'm gonna go back full screen. So that in here you can see that we pretty much just scanned a room, which took like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes, and then we put it into Unity, into VR. So we scan the place for 15 minutes and then we can go there in VR. I mean, it's very, very, very basic and it looks very bad, but in the concept, that's amazing. You know, if the technology gets better, then it might have very, very interesting applications. Then we moved on to photogrammetry, but before that I'd like to introduce my team a little bit. There's this one Estonian, one Irish, one Swedish and one Brazilian guy, and they were all content creators, and Frederick, the Swedish guy, for example, had created some footage for National Geographic, like 360 film about lions, that they put a camera inside a pride of lions. And this Brazilian guy was very quiet. He was very helpful, very nice, always smiling, but he didn't talk much. So at one point we were going to eat together, and I kind of asked like, "So you do like VR stuff, or what do you do?" And he says that, "Yeah, I do like 360 documentaries and stuff like this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, documentaries, yeah, okay." Because I have this, I'm skeptical about documentaries, but then he mentioned that they did this one piece for Google and this one piece for Oculus, and I was more interested. And apparently the Oculus piece was, the Google thing was for the Rio Olympics. He made a 360 film about the favelas, and the Oculus one was, the Oculus has a project called VR for Good, when they make this kind of a social message kind of 360 films, and his film was about the maximum security prisons of United States. And he said it was all produced by Oculus, so it's very interesting for me to hear how the actual thing would go. So it was produced by Oculus, and all the cameras and post-production was by them, but for example, this Oculus short film that he made had a budget of about $40,000, which for an international production is pretty much nothing. So it was very interesting to hear that in in these regions, it's not like huge monies are flowing or anything, nothing like this. But I watched both films, and I have to say that his films were like the best VR films I have ever seen. Like seriously, this a very cool Southern American feel to them, and very touching stories, and very nice editing rhythms, and actually Mark Zuckerberg made a long post about this film, about the American maximum security prisons. I think it was called something like Step to the Line or something like this. Very, very, very cool pieces. If you watch like 1 or 2 VR films in your life, watch those. Very good filmmaking. So that's it about Google Tango. Then we moved on to photogrammetry, and we tried like different kinds of softwares actually, and tried to work out what works best. Unfortunately, I don't have the model up in Sketchfab, so the best we have here is like a screenshot of the thing. But how it actually works is that we found this place. There was this film set museum in there for Vicky the Viking. Does everybody know Vicky the Viking? It used to be a cartoon, but a few years ago they made a film. Apparently it was very bad, but the sets were pretty nice. So we found this place that we called Viking Porch. Actually, the name of our project was Viking Porch VR. And then we scanned it in photogrammetry. And what that means basically is that you would have a DSLR camera and up on a tripod, and then you would make a shot, move it a little bit, make a shot, move it a little bit, and make this like a half circle around the object that you're trying to capture. And the results were a lot better than we expected. Not only does it create a mesh model, but actually it takes the textures from there. I mean, the flowers in there were like a pretty complicated texture, especially when you only see it from this angle. But it was able to solve it very well, and the software that we had the best results with was called Reality Capture. So if you're into that sort of stuff, you might try it. But also like very quick way of prototyping. I mean, you can do it in like a few hours, and you have like an actual 3D model of something. So, which of course needs to be cleaned up, but still amazing. So our result of the workshop was this Viking porch with my model from Google Tango standing there, and I recorded 5 minutes of me talking about semiotics in Estonian, and it was blabbering about that, and the whole thing's background was 360 video. So kind of a mess, and not real value, but very, very fun learning process, and a lot of interesting prototyping in the way there. So the fun thing I'm talking about is the VR arcade. At one evening we were all invited to the grand opening of the VR arcade in Munich called Presence. The party itself wasn't that impressive, there were actually pretty few people there, but you might be interested in the setup. In this picture you can see the bodysuit, which means that when you're playing a game, each time when you get hit, you get this bzzzt, little vibration. I have to admit that it was pretty underwhelming. Maybe the game itself that we played was the game itself wasn't that interesting, but you know, sometimes boring games in VR can be very fun. I mean, when you watch Space Pirate Trainer on a screen, then it looks like the most boring game ever, but it's very intense. But this game wasn't, and the suit didn't help much, so it's just like a nice thing to have. But you might be a bit more interesting about this setup. So I was 4 people playing in co-op, and you have this overview camera that you can watch from the screen. And it had a PvE and PvP mode. So this is PvE, and everybody is is fighting together. But they also used the lights so that when somebody would get hit, the light would turn red and like there would be like a red glow in here. But if you play team against team, then you would have different colors on different players, so that when the people would watch it from the screen, they would understand who's who, which might be impressive for you, might be not. I don't know. Anyways, it looked very good. And
Custom game.
the game actually was also custom. That was the weird part. It had a very stupid generic name, like Samurai, I think. The game had nothing to do with samurais. And yeah, we played it. It was a lot of fun. It was kind of like I think the PvE looked totally boring, but the PvP was loads of fun. You had these towers that you would teleport to and try to capture them, and while doing that, you shoot each other. So both teams kind of trying to capture more towers. And I was pretty amazed how good the machine gun was, which of course it has the Vive controller inside it. But I have always thought that Vive controller is has a very stupid shape and is not very ergonomical when you have like these two sticks in your hand. But in a machine gun, it would fit perfectly. Like the trigger is exactly in the right place. So that had never occurred to me before, but it worked wonderfully. Yeah, and the game was also made by people who were close to the place because they were actually there, developers. And we had to wait in line for the developers to finish playing their own game before we could play. And it uses some sort of a virtual reality platform called Hologate. So I understand that they're not only promoting it, so they're doing a lot of things at the same time. At the same time it's a VR arcade, at the same time it's a VR arcade platform, and at the same time they have their own game that they're also promoting. So maybe a little bit trying to overachieve in there. I don't know. They're German. So yeah, that was the main thing about it. So that's about it. There were some more lectures and some more software and cameras and stuff that we saw, but I'm going to just jump over those. So, do you have any questions? Lots of subjects. Okay. If you don't have any questions, then yeah.
The last slide that you had.
Yes.
What controllers were they using in that shoot 'em up game?
Usual Vive controllers, and I understand from here it also says VR accessories, so that this is also something that they are providing themselves.
They probably stick it on a gun model or something.
Mm-hmm. It was plastic, very light. I think somebody said they ordered them from Hong Kong or something.
And you tried that buzzing suit as well?
Yeah. And yeah, it didn't leave me impressed. It's supposed to be more intense because, you know, that was like a kind of like a defense game that you are in some behind a wall and monsters are coming from everywhere and you're shooting them. But so it would be in theory it should be more intense because you're afraid of the buzz and that's why you're hiding more instead of just standing and taking all the hits. But you know, it didn't really work for me. Maybe the game was bad. Maybe the
battery was dying.
Sorry.
The battery was dying.
Maybe the battery was dying. Maybe yeah. But I didn't feel like it made me feel more immersed. But it could be individual, and it's definitely a fun thing to have in an arcade. But maybe, yeah, of course, putting it on and taking it off is a lot of hassle, and you need help.
The rest was some aftermarket from some other company, or they also made the vest.
Not sure. I don't think they made it.
They built the house. invented VR.
Yeah. You know, your experience might vary. I was not impressed.
I have a quick question about photogrammetry as well.
Yeah.
How far do you think we are from having photogrammetry be like good enough that you can just walk through an environment? You can spend maybe like an hour there, it doesn't really matter. But good enough that you can use it in an actual 360 film instead of having just a flat like, background.
In film?
Yeah.
I don't think that would be photogrammetry, that would probably be volumetric capture. Of course, these two things might also blur together in the future. I would say 10 years, but once we're there, it's like a complete game changer, because you know, that's also something we discussed with Brett, that once you have volumetric capture, I as a filmmaker, when I would want to make a film in here, I would have to book the place and light it up, and then put actors here and do all these shots and you know, from different camera angles, different lenses, all that stuff. But if I could volumetrically capture the place, then I could do it in a studio. I could use virtual actors. I could change the lighting conditions. The camera would be virtual. I could have the same performance and have a wide shot, have a close-up, have all these two shots of all these angles. Just choose them in post, you know. So once we reach that area, it's gonna be very different. But at the same time, you know, films like Avatar or whatever, I'll say, already are so much created in post, so that it's just not 360 films yet. So I don't know, all of these fields are developing so fast, and there's so much potential with Tango. You know, just if people have the Tango phone and you know, they would just, if everybody has a Tango phone, soon the whole world would be just captured, and you have this data about like every place, so you have a 3D model of pretty much everything. So that's definitely coming. I mean, Google already has. It's because when you think about it, Google is the same company. The same company who makes this technology already has Google Earth and the whole planet kind of mapped in. So they're not going to stop there. They're going to go all the way.
Is the Viking Forge VR experience available somewhere?
Yeah, I have it. I have it as a Unity project. I have the Excel also, but I haven't tried it on my own computer yet.
Because basically you could already do like a stop motion volumetric film. So you can come here, you can take the background with this volumetric capture, and then you take the performer the other way around. So you go around the performer and you get the 360 performer. And if the viewer is in the center of this place, then the surrounding looks 3D, and the performer is like this stop motion guy walking around you or something.
Definitely.
The
animation is hard, of course, because
it's going to be blurry and bad.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
But you would need to rig the model, which is just instead of trying to capture these different stop motion steps, because.
But then you have to motion capture you rig the model, then you have to pose the model.
Well, that's the thing. To do it well, you would need a lot of money, a lot of technology, a lot of time, but doing it in a bad way just got easier. So, I mean, none of this technology is not. I mean, Google Tango is new, but photogrammetry and capturing 3D objects is not new. I mean, games and films use it for tens of years, but it's just getting easier and better and easier to approach, even if you haven't studied computer science for 20 years or something. So definitely a great potential there.
I have a quick follow-up question to photography. I'm kind of new to the field. Could you explain in like 2 sentences what is volumetric capture and like why is it better? Or if it's a longer talk, you can talk later.
I haven't really come into contact with volumetric capture myself because it doesn't really exist yet. But when people talk about what was the camera? Live field cameras, yeah, exactly. Then that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Just capture the whole data, so that when you have a camera filming something, you would also have like the depth info.
It's a camera where you can change focus later. Basically.
Exactly. And not only focus, you can. It already kind of senses the different depth. So you can, for example, put a snow effect, but behind the people who are in the foreground and between some layers. So, but it's actually quite similar to what Google Jump is trying to do with just a bunch of cameras. So, a lot of different technologies kind of all going to the same place.
Short answer is the Tango and the DSLR things are actually the same thing, which is different quality.
Yeah, different technology to do it and different quality, but I mean the principle is same. But you could assume that it has a quality change because the volumetric capture was captured with a DSLR, like a very high quality camera, like a very thoroughly, and you would have like this do a €3,000 laptop with a very powerful graphics card would render it for like 2 hours instead of doing it real time on a phone with Google Tango. So of course the quality is different, but the fact that even the low end is there already is technology is only gonna get better. So yeah, interesting times ahead.
Just about to approach 1 hour, so I think
Oh,
that's wrap.
thank you.